Oh, before we go into materials, I have good news. 24 to 26, I mentioned that I joined this retreat, right? Long Paul Viradamo. But it turns out, actually, it does not, when I check further details, it does not conflict with the morning meditation because the retreat starts at 7:45. Yeah. So I can still ring the bell at 7:30 and then do a puja, but I will not do a sharing. Yeah. So that's one good news. Our daily sitting will continue. Going back to the material. Yesterday, we started to dive into the second foundation of mindfulness, feeling. The important part here, the word feeling is used not in the sense of emotion, yeah, which will be covered in the next two foundations of mindfulness. The third and fourth foundations. Here, feelings should be understood in the narrower sense of the affective tone or hedonic quality of experience. Shifu sometimes say a more appropriate word would be sensation. What kind of sensation is whatever that you come in contact with and the first thing that you feel. The first thing that you feel in terms of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. Yeah, these three.
Is he still at Sufu?
Well, they won't have to ask him. Okay. Yeah, going back. These three, whenever you come in contact with something, pleasant feeling, painful feeling, neutral feeling. Okay. This is also important. Feeling arises in dependence on a mental event called contact, phasa. Contact marks the coming together of three things: consciousness, the object itself, and a sense faculty. Let's consider why these three things are important, especially consciousness. If you consider a camera, a mere camera, a camera, we can say, is an inanimate object, but it can seize things and then display it up. The fact that we are in the Zoom is because there is a camera. There is a camera, we can say this is a parallel to sense faculty, and there is an object, which is everything that the camera captures. But camera doesn't have this called consciousness. In this case, we cannot say the camera has contact, phasa, in the Buddhist sense. But humans like us, we have consciousness. So whatever that captures our eyes via a sense faculty of eyes with whatever we see, the object, and together with eye consciousness, this is what is formed. This is the event that is called contact here in the Buddhist sense. Do you see the difference? Another example, when you sleep, most of your consciousness also falls asleep. There could be, your eyes are closed. There's no input coming through the eyes, at least very minimal. You can see how the contact is reduced at the point you are sleeping. Probably not totally zero, but you can see that it's mostly reduced. the third paragraph that we covered, feeling is important because it is feeling that triggers the latent defilements into activity. Here, it is summarized concisely. From this, it can be seen that each of the root defilements is conditioned by a particular kind of feeling. Greed by pleasant feeling, aversion by painful feeling, delusion by neutral feeling. This is where mindfulness comes into play. The link between feelings and defilements is not a necessary one. Pleasure does not always have to lead to greed, pain to aversion, neutral feeling to delusion. The tie between them, the tie like this, can be snapped. And one essential means for snapping it is mindfulness. Feeling will stir up the defilement only when it is not noticed, when it is indulged rather than observed. By turning it into an object of observation, mindfulness diffuses the feeling so that it cannot provoke an unwholesome response. Diffuse here, like diffusing a bomb, but let's define. The first definition, remove the fuse from an explosive device in order to prevent it from exploding. Make a situation less tense or dangerous. That it cannot provoke an unwholesome response. Then, instead of relating to the feeling by way of habit, through attachment, repulsion, apathy, we relate by the way of contemplation, using the feeling as a springboard for understanding the nature of experience. Here, two examples came to mind that I have shared in some sessions before. Firstly, what you can try is what you do every day with the food that you eat. The normal way that I eat, usually, going to the Chai Fan stall, choose something that I like. Auntie, this one. Yeah. Everything that I point to is everything that I like. Okay, the normal way, oh, the food is here, I'm hungry, time to eat. Oh, I indulge in the food, like an animal. Whenever there's food, oh, makan. Yeah, that is the normal way, not the mindfulness way. But some occasions, some meal, I try to be mindful, at least the first few bites. You can try just the first 3 bites. Use your spoon, take your food mindfully, be aware of every act of lifting up the spoon until you open your mouth, put it in your mouth, be aware of every act, and then put it in your mouth, cover your mouth, take out your spoon, and then starts to feel every bite. How does it feel? Let's say an example of celery, a very crunchy vegetable. Put it in your mouth and then starts to bite. Crash! The water inside the vegetable splash out. Oh, that's how it feels. It feels a little bit crispy. And then you start to see the taste, whether this vegetable is salty, whether it is bland. You have to know perfectly how it feels without indulging in it, without having the extra defilement that say, oh, this is so nice, I want to have this more. Just notice every bit of thing that you feel and stops at there. This is how you can apply mindfulness in one way, yeah, in the way of eating. This is one example of applying mindfulness to pleasant feelings, usually the food that we like. So the pleasure of food does not always have to lead to greed of food if you apply mindfulness. You snap the link between them. A second example is cold shower. How many of you use hot shower? Oh, some of you use cold shower. That's interesting and good as well. You save on gas. Yeah. For me, I was always afraid of cold shower. Yeah, that's one. So some days I challenge myself. This time I will use a cold shower and then I will be mindful of how it feels. So I enter into the shower, switch on before switch on, I make a determination. I will be mindful whenever the water hits my body. Turn on the shower. In the usual way, without mindfulness, I will always be, oh no, it's so cold. I cannot tahan. Oh, too hot, too cold. But on the days that I apply mindfulness, whenever the water hits the body, okay, this is feeling of cold in the skin, feeling of cold in the skin. Until after a while, after I get used to it, I keep the water running. And then surprisingly, the aversion is reduced so much, to my own surprise, whenever I mindful of how it feels when it touched my body, compared to my usual way. When I don't apply mindfulness, I was like, oh no, I don't like this cold shower. Please, not again. Yeah, this is one way that I apply mindfulness there. This is just some of the examples. You can apply this to anything in your daily life. Yeah. I drew one diagram yesterday on how feeling on the left, defilements on the right. Yeah, the feeling has three: pleasant, painful, neutral. The defilements: greed, hatred, delusion. What snaps these three links is the one in the center, mindfulness. Whatever pleasant feeling that arises in you, it doesn't always have to lead to greed. Same with painful feeling, doesn't always have to lead to hatred. Neutral feeling doesn't always have to lead to delusion. That was a further elaboration of what we covered yesterday. Any extra comments from you? Anything you would like to add on? If not, let's continue reading. In the early stages, the contemplation of feeling involves attending to the arising feelings, noting their distinctive qualities: pleasant, painful, neutral. The feeling is noted without identifying with it, without taking it to be I or mine or something happening to me. Awareness is kept at the level of bare attention. One watches each feeling that arises, seeing it as merely a feeling, a bare mental event shorn of all subjective references, all pointers to an ego. The task is simply to note the feeling's quality, its tone of pleasure, pain, or neutrality. This paragraph links back again mindfulness of feeling to the concept of non-self. Whatever feeling that arises in you, note it without identifying with the feeling. This is my pleasure. The pleasure of the food is mine. It's in my mouth. So we should just note the feeling. The water running through my body, it's the cold that I feel. That's the wrong way. Just note that, the cold water is cold. Just note that without identifying it as I'm being cold, Marcel being cold. Without taking it to be I, mine, or something happening to me. The cold water runs through me. That is the wrong way. Awareness is kept at the level of bare attention. One watches each feeling that arises, seeing it as merely a feeling, a bare mental event, shorn. Let's define shorn here. Cut the wool off a sheep or other animal. Have something cut off. I think this is what Bhikkhu Bodhi meant. A bare mental event cut off of all subjective references, all pointers to an ego and identity. Our task is simply to note the feeling's quality, its tone of pleasure, pain, or neutrality. Okay, let's read one last paragraph on this session. Sister Billy, would you like to read?
But as practice advances, as one goes on noting each feeling, letting it go and noting the next, the focus of attention shifts from the qualities of feelings to the process of feeling itself. The process reveals a ceaseless flux of feelings arising and dissolving, succeeding one another without a halt. Within the process is nothing lasting. Feeling itself is only a stream of events, occasions of feeling flashing into being moment by moment, dissolving as soon as they arise. Thus begins the insight into impermanence, which, as it evolves, overturns the three unwholesome roots. There is no greed for pleasant feelings, no aversion for painful feelings, no delusion over neutral feelings. All are seen as merely fleeting and substanceless events devoid of any true enjoyment or basis for involvement.
Thanks, Billy. The other way to do mindfulness of feeling, we shift our attention from the qualities of feelings to the process of feeling itself. The process reveals a ceaseless flux of feelings arising and dissolving, succeeding one another without a halt. Within the process, there is nothing lasting. Back again to the notion of impermanence, while the previous paragraph focused on the notion of non-self. It is only a stream of events, feeling itself, occasions of feeling flashing into being moment by moment, dissolving as soon as they arise. Yeah. Thus begins the insight of into impermanence, which, as it evolves, overturns the three unwholesome roots. Yeah. What is an example of this? The one that I shared before. Whenever you meditate or whenever I try to sleep, itches arises. But itches is a feeling that it will arise. Yeah, if you notice it, it will arise. And if you don't even need to scratch it. Eventually it will fade away, it will dissolve. Yeah, so you can notice how the itch arises and ceases, and thus the impermanence of the itches that you feel. That's one way. With that, we conclude for this contemplation of feeling. Yeah, tomorrow we will do a quick summary, and then if we have time, we will dive into the contemplation of the state of mind, the third foundation of mindfulness. Any of you would like to add on before we wrap up for today?
Good morning. I'm not sure exactly I understand how when we sit and watch the neutral feelings, right? How do that then cause delusion to arise? I guess I probably need an example because we're stuck with it. Because if breathing is neutral, then we keep watching breathing. And how do we then ensure that we're not getting deluded? Of course, we can watch dullness, we can watch sleepiness, but is that delusion? So I'm a bit stuck with this one. Yeah, if anyone can give me any examples. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Jolene, yes.
Since this is such a good question, actually. In fact, this was also discussed in many levels, in a lot of teachings. Why would neutral becomes a delusion? Because in fact, the seeds of neutrality is just because we did not pay attention and discrimination to the object. And that's why it's neutral. But in nature, it actually was just because we didn't pay attention to it. So if you start paying attention and discriminate it, it will start become wholesome or unwholesome eventually. So that point of no attention and no discrimination will slowly change when the conditions and the seeds, right? The condition meets the seeds, it will either become A or B eventually. And that's why to some extent it's called delusion, but to many extent is because of lack of our attention and discrimination to the object. So because the seeds and the condition must meet to produce either a contaminated or uncommunicated karma in that sense. So that's why at this moment, we call it ignorance first delusion for the temporary purposes of understanding the topic of neutral feeling. Yeah. I don't know whether I make it more confusing or not. Sorry.
What do you think, Billy?
If I understand it correctly, then it's that state of actually inattention. It's because it's neutral. It's not like pain or it's not like unpleasant or pleasant. So we just let it go. So we're actually not attentive. So when we're not attentive, that maybe quick moment or even when we lost touch of that neutral feeling is actually a deluded state, if I understand that correctly. It's like you can walk, but you can walk blindly, right? Yeah. So you can breathe, but actually you don't know you're breathing. So maybe that state. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I get it correctly, then thank you, Sister Jolene. If you need to clarify further.
I agree with what Jolene explained. One example that for breathing, that's a good example that you bring up. Shifu in the meditation class, he always asks, are you breathing? Did you recall? So are you breathing? Raise your hand if you're breathing. All of you. The next question that he asks, how do you know? Sister Billy, how do you know that you're breathing?
Because we know we are aware.
Yeah, because when Shifu asked that question, are you breathing? We started to become aware of it. Yes, we are breathing. Of course, I'm aware of it. But normally, we don't really notice that we are breathing, at least in our day-to-day life. Yeah. So when we don't notice that we are breathing, that is when it is neutral to us and we don't generally notice it, and it causes us to be, it leads to delusion. Yeah, that's how I understand it. But that's a very good question. I think it's not so easy to understand because it's so subtle and we don't usually feel it on day-to-day basis.
Yeah, because I think pleasant or unpleasant feeling is very, you feel it directly, right?
Exactly.
First, the most easiest one I think is unpleasant. Pleasant also difficult because we like it. So the neutrality is difficult because, like Sister Jolene said, it can shift us right into a pleasant, and then we didn't catch it. So I think it's a fine moment that is difficult. And usually because neutral, we don't really feel anything. Okay, just let it go. Yeah.
Yes, that's so true. The easiest one to notice is unpleasant feeling, because whenever unpleasant feelings arises, we always want it to go away. When the pleasant feeling arises, we generally indulge in it. Yeah, so that's the second level. The third one is, of course, the neutral feeling. Yeah. Usually that's the order. The marketer always say, which one does people usually prefer? The first one, away from hell. The second one, a promise to heaven.
Sorry, so I need to kind of bring this up a little bit. While although we just be careful on this. Okay, so we are aware that the neutral can be wholesome, unwholesome eventually, but we also aware that because of selflessness, right? Selflessness by itself, it is neutral. If we don't have a discrimination or feelings towards it, by nature, it can be neutral. So it's a very tricky topic in that sense. Yes, while during our practice, we recognize neutral, we're very aware, neutral can be later wholesome, unwholesome. That's very good. Step number one, let's practice that, very awareness. But as you moved into an investigation of selflessness, empty of inherent existence, right? Empty of inherent existence. This object itself has no good or bad. It's actually, by nature, it's neutral. So then you go into a second look at this matter, and that's called the contemplation investigation. So it is constantly this kind of practice. I feel that it is why this Buddhism is so, it tells you it exists, and then it tells you it is selfless. Yeah. But knowing it exists is the first step. Then moved into, it's actually selfless, it's empty. And then you have to let go, which is where I think Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi have step by step did a very specific para, second and third para. If we actually study that slowly, right, he's actually moving into like teaching us some meditation method actually. Yeah. So he's moving into telling you, be aware. It's like us, like last Sunday, Venerable Children and Venerable Vicky Daki, I forgot his name. They were actually discussing what is secular mindfulness and what is Buddhist mindfulness. So a lot of people are teaching mindfulness out there, while at work, mindfulness, yoga, mindfulness, teaching a lot of that, marketing mindfulness and all that. And he clearly defined a big difference. When do we know it's just a secular? When it's a Buddhist mindfulness? I thought they actually express it very well. Yeah, so brother, if you can share the link, I think it really relates to this topic very well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there a recording for this?
Yes. They have a recording. Maybe later I'll share with you.
Yeah, you can share with me, then I can share with them.
Yeah. So actually it brought up very clearly, right? A secular mindfulness is just like a housewife attentive to their cooking, right? Very attentive, not forget to off the fire, remember to put the oil, how many spoonful of salt I put. Okay, that's quite secular mindfulness. But Buddhist mindfulness is beyond that. Buddhist mindfulness really leads us to get out of suffering eventually when we are mindful of what we do. Is that we start to know, and we can define what is wholesome and unwholesome. We go into that matter a lot. We don't stop at being mindful of our action. We investigate further if this is wholesome, unwholesome. And then we investigate further into a wisdom, state of wisdom. So that's why Venerable says that if you want to practice secular mindfulness, then it's secular mindfulness. But if you want to study, if you want to follow the Buddhist mindfulness, then the whole objective, right, at the end is to really get us out of suffering, is to understand emptiness and selflessness eventually. So the direction is quite different. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Jolene. Yeah. I think we can continue the discussion tomorrow. Let's wrap up for today with a dedication. 厌消三障诸烦恼，厌的智慧证明了，普厌罪障细消除，世世常行菩萨道。阿弥陀佛。Till we meet again, may we be guided by the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Have a neutral day ahead. Thanks everyone for participating. I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.